In the heart of Yokohama, a vibrant city where neon lights and towering skyscrapers dominate the skyline, a young girl named Aiko Nakamura lived a simple, ordinary life. She attended school, played with her friends, and went home to a loving family. But Aiko always felt like there was something different about her, something special that she couldn't quite put her finger on. One day, while wandering through the bustling streets of Yokohama, Aiko stumbled upon an old, dusty bookshop. She was drawn to the mysterious, leather-bound tomes that lined the shelves, and eventually found herself drawn to a hidden alcove in the back of the store. There, she discovered a stack of ancient, handwritten journals that belonged to her grandmother, a renowned sorceress who had passed away years ago. As Aiko read through the pages, she began to realize that she possessed extraordinary powers hidden within her. Aiko's grandmother had been a master of shadow magic, and she had passed down her skills to her granddaughter. Aiko discovered that she had the ability to manipulate shadows, to shape them and move them at her will. But there was a catch. Aiko's shadow was bonded to her emotions, constantly shifting in appearance and strength. At first, Aiko was thrilled by her newfound powers. She spent hours experimenting with different shapes and sizes of shadows, reveling in the sense of control she had over them. But as she grew more confident in her abilities, she began to realize that her emotions were tied to her powers in ways she hadn't anticipated. Whenever she felt sad or angry, her shadow would grow dark and twist into menacing forms. And when she was happy or excited, her shadow would dance and shimmer with joy. Aiko was constantly battling with her own emotions, trying to keep them in check so that her powers wouldn't spiral out of control. Despite the challenges she faced, Aiko continued to practice her shadow magic. She learned to channel her emotions more effectively, using them to fuel her powers rather than letting them control her. And as she grew more skilled, she began to realize that her magic could be used for more than just her own personal gain. Aiko started using her powers to help those around her, casting shadows to shield them from the sun on hot days, or creating creatures of shadow to amuse children. And as she did, she began to understand that her gift was not just a means of personal empowerment, but a responsibility to use her magic to help others. In the bustling city of Yokohama, Aiko Nakamura discovered her extraordinary powers and learned to wield them with responsibility and compassion. And as she walked through the crowded streets, her shadow danced and shifted with her every emotion, a symbol of the remarkable gift she had inherited from her grandmother. Aiko Nakamura sat cross-legged on a cushion in her grandfather's study, her eyes fixated on the book in front of her. The tome was old and dusty, filled with cryptic symbols and incantations. But despite the difficulty of the text, Aiko was completely absorbed in its teachings. Guided by her grandfather's lessons, she was determined to harness her powers, no matter what it took. Ever since discovering her shadow magic, Aiko had been plagued by a constant fear that her powers would become uncontrollable. But her grandfather, a great sorcerer in his own right, had taught her the importance of practice, discipline, and self-control. Under his guidance, Aiko had developed impressive skills, honing her abilities until she was able to manipulate shadows with ease. Still, there was so much more she had yet to learn. So, with the support of her friends Hana and Ryo, Aiko set her sights on a journey to a hidden realm known as the Shadow Realm. There, she hoped to unravel the mysteries surrounding her abilities and uncover new techniques to help control her powers. The journey to the Shadow Realm was long and treacherous, filled with danger and uncertainty. For Aiko, it was a test of everything she had learned from her grandfather, a chance to prove herself as a true sorceress. But with her friends by her side, she felt confident and prepared for whatever lay ahead. As they entered the Shadow Realm, Aiko was struck by its otherworldly beauty. The realm was filled with darkness, but not the foreboding darkness of fear. Rather, a comforting, familiar darkness that felt like an extension of her own shadows. Here, Aiko felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. But the Shadow Realm held its own share of dangers. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, waiting to pounce on unsuspecting travelers. And the mysteries that Aiko sought to unravel were shrouded in secrets that threatened to overwhelm her at every turn. Despite these challenges, Aiko and her friends pressed on, determined to uncover the truth about Aiko's powers. They spent days exploring the Shadow Realm, studying ancient texts, and practicing new techniques. And slowly, Aiko began to gain a deeper understanding of the intricacies of her abilities. Finally, on the final night of their journey, Aiko stood on a high peak overlooking the Shadow Realm. She closed her eyes and breathed in the cool night air, feeling a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. And as she opened her eyes, she realized that she had accomplished something truly remarkable, a feat that would make her grandfather proud. With newfound confidence and skills, Aiko stepped back into the light, ready to take her place as a true sorceress of the shadows. She knew that her journey had only just begun, but with the love and support of her friends, she was ready to face whatever came next, certain that she could overcome it with the power of her shadow magic. As Aiko and her friends Hana and Ryo journeyed through the Shadow Realm, they encountered a mysterious group of shadow beings known as the Umbranauts. The Umbranauts served as guardians of the balance between light and darkness, and were rumored to possess powerful abilities beyond what any mortal sorcerer could achieve. Drawn to Aiko's unique powers, the Umbranauts pledged to assist her in mastering her abilities. With their guidance, Aiko embarked on a rigorous training program, focused on combat, stealth, and spellcasting. She spent countless hours mastering new techniques, gradually unlocking new levels of control over her shadows. Aiko discovered that the Umbranauts were not just skilled warriors, but also wise teachers. They imparted to her valuable lessons about the importance of balance between light and darkness, and between the emotional and rational aspects of her personality. This helped Aiko understand that her emotions were not enemies to be defeated but rather tools to be harnessed. Over time, Aiko grew stronger, faster, and more skilled. She learned how to move silently through the shadows, how to create complex illusions, and how to summon shadow creatures to do her bidding. With each new lesson, Aiko felt more and more confident in her abilities, until she could wield her powers with finesse and elegance. As she progressed in her training, Aiko encountered new enemies and challenges, from rogue sorcerers to dark creatures that roamed the Shadow Realm's many caves and forests. At each obstacle, the Umbranauts were there to guide her, offering advice and encouragement as she battled her way to victory. But it wasn't just through combat that Aiko honed her skills. The Umbranauts also taught her how to use her shadows in creative and subtle ways, from hiding in plain sight to manipulating light and sound. They showed her how to use her shadows as tools for surveillance, communication, and even healing. As Aiko's training neared its end, The Umbranauts gathered to bid her farewell. They were impressed by her determination, discipline, and courage, and had no doubt that she would use her powers to serve the balance between light and darkness. With their blessing, Aiko emerged from the Shadow Realm and made her way back to Yokohama. She knew that her training was far from over, but she was content in the knowledge that she had unlocked new levels of control over her shadows. And as she walked through the bustling city streets, her shadow danced and shimmered, a symbol of the remarkable power she now wielded. As Aiko and her friends Hana and Ryo continued their exploration of the Shadow Realm, they began to uncover troubling secrets. A malevolent force known as the Shadow King seemed to be lurking in the shadows, intent on plunging the world into eternal darkness. Aiko could sense his presence, an overwhelming wave of fear and darkness that threatened to consume everything in its path. As they delved deeper into the realm's secrets, Aiko began to realize that her connection to the Shadow Realm was not by chance but rather part of a larger prophecy. She was destined to become the Shadow Princess, the only one capable of stopping the Shadow King's reign of terror. At first, Aiko was hesitant to accept her destiny. She had never thought of herself as a heroine, let alone someone capable of defeating a powerful villain. But her friends and the Umbranauts urged her to embrace her true potential, telling her that the fate of the world hung in the balance. Thus, Aiko began to hone her skills even further, pushing herself to the limit and mastering new techniques that would aid her in her quest. She learned how to channel her inner strength, how to use her emotions to amplify her powers, and how to tap into the Shadow Realm's energies to increase her abilities. As she trained, Aiko began to realize that the Shadow King's powers were formidable. He had the ability to manipulate shadows on a grand scale, bending them to his will and creating shadow creatures that were nearly unstoppable. Aiko knew that if she was to have any hope of defeating him, she would have to use every ounce of her strength and skill. Finally, after months of preparation, Aiko and her friends made their way towards the Shadow King's lair. It was a treacherous journey, filled with traps and obstacles designed to thwart any would-be heroes. But Aiko and her friends persevered, and they finally stood before the Shadow King himself. In a fierce battle, Aiko fought the Shadow King with all her might. She used her shadows in ways she never thought possible, creating constructs of darkness that would deflect his attacks and shield her from harm. The battle raged on for hours, with both sides evenly matched. Finally, as the sun began to rise, Aiko delivered the final blow. She summoned all her strength and focused all her energy into one devastating attack, an explosion of shadow energy that annihilated the Shadow King's physical form. Aiko and her friends emerged from the Shadow Realm, exhausted but relieved. They had fulfilled the prophecy and saved the world from the Shadow King's evil. And though Aiko was no longer the Shadow Princess, she knew that her destiny was far from over, that there would always be more challenges to overcome and more threats to defeat. But with her friends by her side, and the lessons of her training to guide her, she felt confident in the knowledge that she could face anything that came her. As the Shadow Princess, Aiko knew that she had a duty to protect both the human world and the Shadow Realm from all harm. It was a daunting task, but one she was willing to embrace wholeheartedly. Despite her newfound confidence, Aiko still battled her inner demons. She was haunted by memories of the Shadow King's reign of terror, and the fear of facing such an evil again weighed heavily on her. But she knew that the only way to overcome her fears was to confront them head-on. With the guidance of the Umbranauts and her friends, Aiko began to delve deeper into her shadow powers, unlocking new abilities and gaining a deeper understanding of her connection to the shadow realm. She learned how to use her powers with finesse and precision, and grew even stronger than before. But it wasn't just physical strength that Aiko needed to overcome the challenges that lay ahead. She also had to confront difficult choices, ones that would have consequences she could not fully imagine. She grappled with the moral complexities of her role, and the weight of her decisions on the lives of those she loved. As Aiko took on her new mantle, she also faced new enemies, rogue sorcerers who sought to use shadow magic for their own gain, and dark creatures that threatened to disrupt the balance between light and darkness. But with each new challenge, Aiko grew more confident in her abilities and more determined to succeed. Finally, the day came when Aiko faced her greatest challenge yet. The Shadow Realm was under threat once again, this time from a powerful sorcerer who had learned to wield the shadows for his own nefarious purposes. Aiko knew that she had to act quickly to stop him. With her friends by her side, Aiko plunged into battle, using every ounce of her strength and skill to defeat the sorcerer and save the Shadow Realm. The battle was intense, but Aiko refused to give up. She fought with everything she had, drawing on the lessons of her training and the love she had for her friends and family. In the end, Aiko emerged victorious. She had saved the Shadow Realm and restored balance to both worlds once more. But she knew that her task was far from over. There would always be new challenges to face and new threats to overcome. But with her unwavering determination and the strength of her shadow powers, Aiko proved that even in the darkest of times, light can triumph over darkness.